Her first cry didn't bring joy, it brought fear with a cry that echoed through the small village. But the midwife's smile froze when she saw it, a dark, intricate mark on the infant's tiny wrist. It looked like ancient writing, swirling in patterns that seemed to shift in the lamplight. The mother gasped, clutching her newborn close. The midwife stepped back, making a sign against evil. "Cover it," she whispered urgently. "Never let anyone see." Word spread quickly through the village that night. Something unnatural had been born among them. The mother wrapped her daughter's arm in white cloth and held her tight, whispering desperate prayers. And then something strange happened. The moment the mark was hidden beneath the fabric, the baby stopped crying. Complete silence fell. The midwife's hands trembled as she backed toward the door, her eyes wide with fear she couldn't name. Years passed, and the girl grew into childhood with gentleness in her heart. But the other children kept their distance. Their parents had warned them with hushed voices and worried glances. She would sit alone under the mango tree during playtime, watching the others run and laugh. She never complained. She never grew bitter. Instead, she helped her mother at home, learning to cook and clean with careful patience. One afternoon, she approached a group playing by the river, holding out wildflowers she'd picked. "Can I join?" she asked softly. The children stared. One boy, bolder than the rest, stepped forward. "You're cursed," he said loudly. "My father said so." She lowered her hand, flowers falling. The boy turned to leave, and tripped, falling hard against a rock. Blood ran from his head. The other children scattered, screaming. Her mother found work for her at a roadside food stall where the smell of frying yam and palm oil filled the morning air. The owner needed help but couldn't afford to be choosy. The girl worked harder than anyone, arriving before dawn to prepare the fire, staying late to clean. Yet customers would glance at her cloth-wrapped wrist and choose to buy elsewhere. She never showed hurt. One hot afternoon, a thin stranger approached, his clothes dusty from travel. "I have no money," he admitted quietly. She smiled and handed him a plate of food anyway. "Eat. You need it." He ate gratefully, but when she turned to wipe the counter, she caught him staring at her wrist. His face went pale. He set down the plate carefully, backing away. "Thank you," he mumbled, then hurried off without looking back. She watched him go, her smile fading. Market day brought noise and chaos to the village square. Two men were shouting over a land dispute, their voices rising, fists clenched. A crowd gathered, anticipating a fight. She was walking past with a basket of yams when she accidentally brushed too close. The moment she passed between them, both men fell silent mid-sentence. The crowd shifted uncomfortably. An unnatural quiet descended, like the world itself was holding its breath. She hurried on, confused. Behind her, the men stood frozen, mouths open but no words coming. One of them touched his throat in panic. The crowd whispered nervously. And then she felt it, a strange warmth beneath the cloth on her wrist. She glanced down. Through the fabric, she could see a faint glow, pulsing once like a heartbeat. Then it stopped. The men began speaking again, but quieter now, subdued. That evening, her mother found her staring at her covered wrist. "Mama, something happened today," she began. Her mother's face went rigid. "Did you uncover it?" she demanded. "No, but listen to me carefully." Her mother gripped her shoulders. "You must never, ever remove this cloth in public. Never let anyone see the mark clearly. Do you understand?" The girl nodded, frightened by the intensity in her mother's voice. "Why? What is it?" Her mother's eyes filled with tears. "A burden," she whispered. "One I pray you never fully understand." That night, after her daughter fell asleep, the mother went to a locked wooden box hidden beneath the floor. She opened it with shaking hands, revealing old letters and a faded cloth bundle. She touched it once, then locked it away again, whispering prayers into the darkness. The food stall grew emptier each day. Regular customers found excuses to buy elsewhere. The owner watched his business dying and finally approached her one morning. "Maybe you should work in the back," he suggested gently. "Away from customers." She understood. She moved to the cooking area, hidden from view. But even that wasn't enough. One afternoon, a woman who hadn't noticed her bought a plate of fried plantains. The moment the woman's eyes landed on the girl's covered wrist, her face changed. She looked down at her food and screamed. The plantains had turned black, rotting before her eyes. The entire plate spoiled in seconds, filling the air with the stench of decay. The woman threw the food down and ran. The owner stared at the ruined plate, then at the girl. "Go home," he said quietly. "Don't come back." Whispers followed her through the village like shadows. "Bad luck walks with that girl. Since she's been around, nothing goes right. My cousin's crops failed after he served her." She heard them all but kept walking, head high, kindness still in her heart. She helped an old woman carry water. She shared her own meager food with stray dogs. She swept the front of her home until the ground shone. But the village grew colder. One evening, a drunk man stumbled past her home, shouting, "Cursed! You're cursed and you're cursing all of us." She said nothing, just went inside and closed the door. That night, fire broke out in his compound. No one knew how it started. The flames consumed his storage shed but stopped before reaching his house. He survived, but the next day he wouldn't speak of it. He wouldn't even look her direction. She began to notice the patterns. When she felt strong emotions, things happened around her. When she was deeply sad, small accidents occurred in the village. A cartwheel breaking, a pot cracking, a child falling. When she was angry, the mark beneath the cloth grew warm. One afternoon, she cried alone in her room over the loneliness that had become her life. Tears fell as she pressed her wrapped wrist to her chest. Miles away in the village square, a newly built well suddenly collapsed inward. No one was hurt, but the timing was impossible to explain. She felt the mark pulse with heat at the exact moment the news reached her. That night, she sat by lamplight, unwrapping the cloth slowly. The mark seemed darker than before, the patterns more defined. She stared at it, and for a moment, she could swear the symbols moved. She covered it quickly, her heart racing. Even the few friends she'd had began crossing the street to avoid her. The isolation became total. She spent her days helping her mother in silence, speaking to almost no one. The market sellers wouldn't take money from her hand. She had to place it on the counter. Children were pulled away when she approached. Yet she kept her dignity. She worked hard. She remained gentle. But the loneliness carved deeper into her heart each day. Then one night, she woke to her mother's screams. She rushed to find her collapsed on the floor, clutching her chest, unable to breathe properly. "Mama!" She held her mother's head, desperate. A neighbor heard the commotion but only cracked his door open, peering out. He saw the girl and quickly shut it again. No one came to help. She stayed with her mother through the night, whispering prayers, wiping her forehead. By morning, her mother was breathing again, but weaker. Much weaker. Her mother recovered enough to sit up, but fear lived permanently in her eyes now. "Come here," she whispered one evening. The girl sat beside her. "I need you to promise me something. Anything, Mama. Promise me you will stay hidden. Promise me you will never draw attention. Promise me," her voice broke. "Promise me you will never tap the mark." The girl's blood went cold. "Tap it." Her mother's face was pale. "Never tap it. Not once. Not ever." "But why? What happens? Just promise me." Her mother grabbed her hand with surprising strength. "Promise me you'll never tap it, no matter what happens, no matter what you feel, no matter what anyone does to you." The girl promised, terrified by her mother's desperation. That night, she lay awake, staring at her wrist, wondering what terrible secret the mark held. Weeks passed in tense quiet. Then one sweltering afternoon, she witnessed an injustice that made her blood boil. A wealthy man cheated a poor farmer out of his harvest payment, laughing as the farmer begged. She watched from across the road, fists clenched. Without thinking, she brought her hand down in frustration. Her fingers tapped the mark once through the cloth. A shock went through her like lightning. The wealthy man suddenly stopped laughing. His expression went blank. Then, as if possessed, he reached into his bag and handed the farmer triple the owed amount. The farmer stared in shock. The wealthy man blinked, confused, looking at his own hands as if they'd betrayed him. She stood frozen, her wrist burning beneath the cloth. Something impossible had just happened. She knew it. She felt it. The mark had responded. She spent days trying to understand what had occurred. Had it really been her? Or just coincidence? She experimented carefully, tapping the mark once while thinking different thoughts. Nothing happened. Maybe she'd imagined it all. Maybe the stress was making her see connections that weren't there. She tried to convince herself of this. But then she overheard a rumor in the market. Someone claimed they'd seen a ghost near the old burial ground. She dismissed it as foolish talk. That afternoon, while washing clothes, she tapped the mark absently, thinking, I wish people would stop spreading lies about ghosts. The next morning, 3 different people came forward saying they'd made up the ghost story for attention. They apologized publicly, unable to explain why they suddenly felt compelled to confess. She stood in the crowd, her heart pounding, her wrist concealed beneath cloth, knowing the truth but too terrified to accept it. Fear of herself became her new companion. She monitored every emotion, every reaction, every movement. What if she accidentally tapped the mark while angry? What if she hurt someone? She began wearing extra layers of cloth around her wrist, padding it to prevent any accidental contact. She spoke less, moved carefully, isolated herself even more. Sleep became difficult. Nightmares of unleashing something terrible haunted her. One evening, she noticed someone watching her house. A young man from the village, known for his greed, lurked in the shadows for 3 nights. On the 4th night, he approached her door. I know your secret, he called out. I've been watching. I know the mark does something. Her blood ran cold. You're wrong. Prove it. Show me. Or I'll tell everyone what I suspect. She refused to open the door. He left, but his threat hung in the air like smoke. The next day at the stall, the owner had reluctantly allowed her back. A customer she'd never seen before made a scene. He complained loudly that his food was cold, though it steamed on the plate. This is what happens when cursed hands touch food, he shouted for everyone to hear. She stood there, enduring his insults, her jaw tight. You're nothing but a curse on this village. Your mother should have drowned you at birth. Something snapped inside her. The mark burned hot. The man opened his mouth to continue his tirade, and no sound came out. His eyes went wide with panic. He clawed at his throat, trying to speak, but complete silence. The crowd noticed. All eyes turned to her wrist. The cloth had slipped slightly, revealing the edge of the mark. It glowed faintly, visibly, for all to see. Gasps erupted. The man backed away, still voiceless, terror in his eyes. By sunset, everyone knew. The girl with the cursed mark had powers. Real powers. Fear spread through the village like wildfire. Mothers pulled children inside. Men gathered in groups, speaking in low, urgent tones. She stayed in her house with her mother, who had grown too weak to stand. What have you done? Her mother whispered. I didn't mean to. He insulted you, Mama. He said terrible things and I couldn't. It doesn't matter what he said, her mother cried weakly. Now they'll never leave you alone. She was right. That night, torches appeared outside. Voices called for her to come out, to explain herself, to prove she wasn't a danger. The village elders arrived, their faces grave. You will come before the council tomorrow, they announced through the door. We will decide what must be done. She held her mother's hand through the night, both of them trembling, knowing morning would bring judgment. The village square filled with people. She stood in the center, alone, her wrist carefully wrapped. The elders sat in judgment while accusations flew. Witchcraft, someone shouted. She cursed my crops, another lied. She made my son sick. They piled lies upon lies, fear transforming into hatred. Remove the cloth, the head elder commanded. Show us this mark. She hesitated. Do it, or we will do it for you. Slowly, she unwrapped the cloth. The mark was revealed in daylight, intricate, dark, pulsing with a subtle energy. The crowd gasped and drew back. Bind her, someone shouted. Cast her out. 2 men approached with rope. They reached for her arms. She pulled back instinctively, and the mark pulsed violently. A wave of unseen force threw both men backward. They crashed to the ground, unharmed but terrified. The crowd screamed. The mark glowed brighter now, responding to her fear, her anger, her desperation. The crowd scattered, leaving her alone in the square. She ran home, tears streaming. Her mother lay in bed, barely conscious. Mama, please, wake up. Tell me what to do. Her mother's eyes opened slowly. My child, she whispered. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry I couldn't protect you. You did protect me, Mama. You tried. There's something you must know. The truth. I should have told you sooner. Her mother's breathing grew labored. Save your strength. No. Listen. The mark. It's not what they think. She coughed weakly. It's not a curse. It's something else. Something I was supposed to tell you when you were ready. Tell me now, Mama. Please. Her mother reached for her hand. Tomorrow. I'll tell you everything tomorrow. I promise. But her mother's eyes were closing, her breathing shallow. Mama. Fear gripped her heart. Mama, stay with me. Morning came, and with it, a crowd at her door. They wanted answers. They wanted her gone. They wanted safety from what they didn't understand. She ignored their shouts, sitting beside her mother's bedside. Her mother woke briefly, lucid for the first time in days. They're afraid, the girl said quietly. Let them be afraid, her mother whispered. You need to understand what you carry. Then tell me. Her mother took a shaky breath. The mark is not a curse, my daughter. It is the opposite. It is a gift. A power passed down through generations. A power. The crowd's shouting grew louder outside. Her mother gripped her hand. It is a mark of command. Of absolute command. The girl's heart stopped. What does that mean? It means, her mother said, her voice barely audible, that the world itself must obey you. When you tap the mark 3 times, her mother continued, and speak a command, reality will bend to make it true. Anything. Everything. No limit. The girl stared at her wrist in horror. That's impossible. You've already done it, haven't you? Felt it respond. She thought of the wealthy man. The voiceless customer. The patterns of strange events. But I only tapped it once, and even a single tap can cause ripples. 3 taps, with intention, with words. That is when the full power awakens. Her mother coughed violently. But there is a cost, my child. There is always a cost. What cost? I don't know. My mother didn't know. No one who used it fully ever lived to explain. The consequences are unpredictable, severe. That is why you must never use it. Promise me again. Promise me you'll never speak a command while tapping 3 times. The girl promised, but her mother's eyes held doubt, as if she knew promises meant little against destiny. Her mother's condition worsened rapidly. By evening, she could barely breathe. The girl sat helpless, watching life drain from the one person who had loved her unconditionally. Mama, please hold on. She could save her. The realization hit like a thunderbolt. She could tap the mark 3 times and command her mother to live, to be healthy. Her hand moved toward her wrist. Her mother's eyes flew open, reading her thoughts. "No," she gasped. "Don't. Promise me. Even for me. Especially for me. Don't." "But you'll die. Everyone dies. But if you use it, you'll lose something far more precious than my life. You'll lose yourself. You'll lose your humanity." Tears streamed down the girl's face. "I can't lose you. You must. You must let me go." And with those words, her mother took her last breath. The girl collapsed over her body, sobbing, her hand clutching the mark but never tapping it. She'd kept her promise. But the cost broke her heart completely. Alone now, she faced the world without guidance. The funeral was empty, just her and the man who dug the grave for payment. No one came to mourn. No one offered comfort. She buried her mother in silence, then returned to an empty house that echoed with memories. Days passed in a haze of grief. She barely ate. She barely slept. The mark felt heavier somehow, as if it knew she was vulnerable, testing her resolve. The village avoided her completely now, but she heard their conversations. They were planning something. She was too dangerous to keep around. They spoke of driving her out, or worse. One night she overheard through the window, "We should act before she curses us all." Fear gripped her, but worse than fear was the temptation. She could command them all to leave her alone. She could command respect, safety, anything. Her hand touched the mark. The promise echoed in her mind. The village gathered for a meeting she wasn't invited to. The decision was made. She had to leave. By force, if necessary. A delegation approached her house at dawn. 10 men, armed with sticks and machetes, faces hard with fear disguised as righteousness. "You have until sunset to leave," their leader announced. "Take nothing but what you can carry." She stood in her doorway, exhausted, grieving, pushed to the absolute limit of what a soul can bear. "This is my home. Not anymore." One of the men spat at her feet. Another kicked dust toward her. "Cursed witch. Your mother's death was probably your fault too." Something inside her cracked. Not anger, something deeper. A well of pain and injustice so deep it had no bottom. Her hand moved to her wrist. The cloth fell away. The mark lay exposed, darker than ever. Her finger hovered over it. The men shifted nervously. "Don't you dare," one began. She looked up, and they saw something in her eyes that froze them. She was done begging. Done enduring. Her finger tapped the mark. Once. Twice. 3 times. The sound echoed impossibly loud, like thunder contained in a heartbeat. The men stumbled backward. "Leave," she commanded, her voice strange even to herself, layered with power that seemed to come from the earth itself. "Leave this village and never return." The words hung in the air, then reality twisted to obey. The men's eyes went blank. As one, they turned and began walking. They dropped their weapons and walked. Past the village boundaries. Into the forest. Their families would find them days later, miles away, unable to remember how they got there or why they left. But in the village itself, something worse happened. The earth shook. Roofs collapsed. Wells ran dry. Crops withered in minutes. A wave of chaos spread outward from where she stood, touching everything, sparing no one. Screams filled the air. She fell to her knees, watching in horror as her command rippled through reality, destroying everything in its path. The cost had come. When the destruction finally stopped, the village lay in ruins. No one was killed, but homes were damaged, food was spoiled, and terror had seared itself into every heart. She stood in the center of it all, surrounded by devastation she had caused. People peered from damaged homes, too afraid to approach, too shocked to flee. She looked at her wrist. The mark had changed. It was darker now, more complex, as if it had absorbed what happened. Guilt crashed over her like a wave. What had she done? In her grief and anger, She'd used the power her mother had begged her to resist. And the cost was written in the broken homes around her. She fell to her knees and wept, not tears of self-pity, but of genuine remorse. "I'm sorry," she whispered to the silence. "I'm so sorry." And in that moment, she made a new vow. Never again. Never for harm. Never in anger. If this power was hers, she would use it only for good, no matter what anyone did to her. The next morning, she emerged from her home with purpose in her eyes. The villagers watched, fearful, expecting more destruction. Instead, she walked to the center square, knelt, and tapped the mark 3 times. "Restore what was broken," she commanded. "Heal what was harmed." The magic obeyed. Roofs mended themselves. Wells filled with clean water. Crops grew back overnight, healthier than before. The villagers stared in disbelief as their homes repaired, as abundance returned. She didn't stop there. Day after day, she used the power carefully, intentionally. A sick child. She commanded healing. A drought-threatening farms. She commanded rain. An accident about to happen. She commanded safety. She never used it for herself. Never in revenge. The consequences still came. She aged faster, her hair graying young, her body weakening, but she accepted the cost. Slowly, fear transformed into gratitude, then into trust, then into love. The village that once called her cursed now called her blessed. She became their protector, their healer, their hope. And she understood finally, true power is not in destroying your enemies, but in choosing mercy when you could choose destruction. She had become not the curse they feared, but the blessing they never knew they needed.